right? So I have menopause brain, so I brought up my notes. So I'm going to hold on to them. So pretty much everything that could go wrong was going wrong, right? But let me back up just a little bit. You see, I am actually what's known as a park brat. And I had the privilege of growing up in Yosemite National Park, literally in the shadow, the backyard. My backyard was Half Dome and El Capitan and Yosemite Falls. And now we were there not because of me, but because of my dad. And my dad worked for the Park Service and was what I like to call, what everybody called, a BFD, right? He was a big fucking deal. He was respected and everyone knew him and loved him. And my mom, too, she was very fierce. She actually worked in the Yosemite jail. Yes, they have a jail. And we were, like, fascinated with this jail. And so when my parents would come home at night, I'd get amazing stories of the stupidity of humanity. Because I don't know what it is about a park, but when people show up at a park, all common sense goes right out the window, along with them going up to pet all the wildlife, right? And so, what I got to hear about at night was missing persons and really stupid people that would rock hop at the top of large waterfalls in springtime. That didn't end well, just so you know. And there was always something bad that happened in El Capitan with climbers or Half Dome with hikers and climbers. So we just love these stories, though. And Half Dome in particular loomed large in my memories as a kid. My dad was also a great outdoorsman, like old school style. Like I have a great picture of him in army surplus wool, like the knickers. Like he looked right out of like a fucking Swiss postcard. Which he was. He was like an old school mountain climber. And so, he wanted to teach his girls how to be hardy, durable, independent women. So my sister Kat and he would take out, and when we camped, we carried about as heavy an army rucksack as you could carry. Like they were usually bigger than me. And we would make these leaky old army tents work. We were supposed to just figure it out. And if we were miserable, we were doing it right. And we were always sleeping. I remember still the smell when I smell mold of the sleeping bags that he would give us. These old, like we were all camoed out. And he would take us into the Yosemite backcountry. And these felt definitely like death marches, right? But he wanted to teach us everything he knew. And he wanted to make sure we didn't end up on their nightly stories about, people seeking their own version of natural selection, right? Like, he's like, let's not have you go there. And he was proud of it. And I think despite our whining, we kind of loved every minute of it. And so my sister and I really grew up, when things went wrong, we'd go to the mountains, right? We'd go to the Sierras, and that's where we found our calm. So some 20 years later, we'd gone off and we were doing our own lives and out there. But my dad had a health crisis, and he had a blocked artery, and went into surgery, and there was a lack of oxygen to the brain. And so things were pretty bad for my dad, and we almost lost him. And that lack of oxygen to the brain meant that we got him home, but he wasn't firing on all cylinders. He was very much spaced out. He wouldn't really talk, and it was pretty scary. And we were all stressed out, and we were trying to be there to help my mom. And we got him a little steady and stable, but it was really hard. So my mom said, you guys, you and your sister go off. And my sister at the time was leading, she worked for Starbucks, and she had a team that she led. And so she was going to take him on a great trip. And this is where it starts to get a little bit like Abigail. But my sister, she invited me to go on this trip, and she told me that the group planned to talk in one day, go to the top of Half Dome. Now, that's doable, but as the Park Service says, it can be done in a day, but only if prepared. You need to be in shape. They recommend leaving early, like 5 a.m., especially if you go in July, which we were, which is hotter than hell. And get there early to find parking at the trailhead so you don't have to take the shuttle bus, right? And otherwise you have to park really far away. So I thought, great, but surely my sister's prepared. Surely she's prepared. Because I know her, we grew up together, and she went through the same hell that I did with my dad. But honestly, I was a little concerned because my parents by then had retired to a small town 4 hours away from Yosemite, so we had a 4-hour drive. And to my curiosity, my sister wanted to stay in this hotel that was an hour away, and I was like, okay. And it was July, so it was a busy time, and she was also talking about wanting to have a nice breakfast the morning before the hike, and I was like, okay. Then she said to the group, we'd be done in time to have drinks at the Ahwahnee. She wanted to have an après drink there. But I let it go. I was like, she's the leader, she's the boss. And this group included these guys, Derek and Dave, and then Mindy, who was her boss's wife. Keep that in mind. The next morning, we didn't get an early start from the hotel, and we made our way to the valley. It took forever because there's a lot of crowds, but we got there, and I'm like, surely we're going straight to the trailhead. My sister said, no, we need to have a breakfast. By now, it's a brunch, honestly. So obviously, we then had to park a long way away. We had to take the shuttle bus. So by the time we hit the trailhead, it's like 11 a.m. And I'm a little nervous, but surely we're just going to go a short ways by this point in time. And so the other thing my sister said is, she's like, oh, the bags are kind of heavy. We're carrying too much water. Let's leave it in the car. We'll be right back. So we leave a lot of snacks and water in the car, and the backpacks were less heavy. That was good news. But off we went, and I started talking to the group, especially Mindy, the boss's wife. And I hadn't met her before, but I said, hey, so are you ready for this 16-mile hike? And she looked at me, and she laughed. And I didn't laugh. And then she got real nervous. And she said, Kat told me it was 3 miles. And I was like, oh, no. And she's like, I haven't been on a hike before. And I looked down, and she had really nice new boots. And I was like, oh, yeah, you have not been on a hike before. But the boots were lovely. And Mindy was a trooper, but not a fast one. The other two guys were okay. There was Derek, who was like a young mountain goat, and he just kept bounding up the trail ahead of us. And then there was Dave. I don't know what the hell his story was, but he was grumpy as shit from the get-go, and likely should have just been left at a bar when we started the morning. Or at brunch. He needed more champagne for sure. So we stopped at 3 miles. It's a beautiful stop. It's called Vernal Falls. You get a great view. Perfect place to stop and turn around. That's a great place to turn around. And I thought, okay, my sister's going to come to her senses. We were raised smart. We are smart, independent women that know what the fuck to do in the backcountry, and we are in trouble. And I say, Kat, I think we should turn around, given that Mindy seems to be hiking about 1 mile an hour at best, and we're already well into the afternoon by now. And I said, look, we also got to get back, catch a shuttle, and you want a drink at the Ahwahnee Hotel. And my sister looked at me and she's like, we're going on. Same military voice. Same military voice. We're going to the top, she said. Mind you, the top was still 4 miles away. We had no water. There was also cables to be climbed up. Like, I don't know what she was thinking there. And it was getting hotter, and we were low on water, of course, and it was late, and everything was going terribly, terribly wrong. So by then, Mindy's got blisters. She's complaining about blisters. And despite hearing my dad's voice in my head, I deferred to my sister. And as you might guess, it got worse from there. It literally took Mindy several hours to go the next 2 miles. And finally we heard thunder and lightning, and I've actually never been so happy to hear thunder and lightning, because I knew this was the one thing my sister would fucking pay attention to. And I said, there's thunder and lightning, we need to turn around. In the meantime, Derek had just left and gone ahead, just bounded up the trail like the little mountain goat that he was, and he was just gone. I don't even know where he was. And my sister, despite her effort to prove her tough love leadership here, was finally realizing that maybe things weren't going well. We were now out of water, and she was super annoyed because Mindy couldn't hike fast. So my sister decided, yes, I'll turn around. And so we also realized it would get dark by the time they would get down because she was taking so long. But don't worry, we did not bring flashlights. So in case you thought we were prepared, we were not. So as a Californian who grew up listening to California history and the Donner Party, I really thought that's where this was going. Because that's what every kid, growing up there, that's what we're afraid of. But I had been training for a marathon that year, so I was actually in pretty good shape. So my sister said, you have to run down there and get the car. And she's like, we're gonna split up. And I was like, oh my God, that's the death knell. That's how everything ends badly. So she deployed me to lead the group. We don't know where Derek is. He's somewhere up the mountain. Knowing that I got back to the car, I drove back to the trailhead, hoping by then that they had made it down. So I quickly got down there, and I get back to the trailhead. It's now about 9 o'clock at night, and I don't see them, but I do see Derek. And I'm like, dude, where's everybody? And he goes, I don't know. I didn't see him. And I was like, where the fuck has this guy been? Right? And so, just so you know, I told him to stay in the car. I'm like, you don't go anywhere. But I realized I was in trouble now. This was time we had flip phones, but there wasn't anything that worked in the park. So I ran to the emergency ranger phone, and I called the rangers, and they recognized my name. And they're like, oh, Laurel, Angel, yes, Fred's daughter. Yes, Fred's daughter. And they're like, tell us what's wrong. And I proceed to tell them every stupid thing I know is wrong that we have done. And he laughs a little at me. And then he goes, well, that's sad, but it's July, they're gonna be okay. That hopefully they'll just sit down and take it easy and sleep. And I was like, yeah, my sister's gonna force them down the hill. But I was like, okay, so they're like, just keep us posted, we'll give you a place to stay if you need it, but hang out and see what happens. So then I make the most painful call, and I call my mom. Now, knowing my dad was completely out of it and just sick and ill, and my mom was stressed, this was an awful call to make. But I call her up, and she is freaked out because Mindy's husband is wondering where the fuck Mindy is. So she's in a panic, and I thought, well, yes, Mindy's husband should be afraid. And as I'm talking to my mom, I realize that my dad has picked up on the other line, and he's listening in, and I'm like, Mom, I called the Rangers, and, here's what happened. And all of a sudden, I hear my dad say, Laurel, I sure as hell hope you didn't give them your name. I don't want them to know that you're my daughters. And I sat there embarrassed and I said, hi, Dad. Welcome back. And if you need to know, it took another 4 hours for my sister to death march those people down. We did go on the 4-hour drive home. We had no half-dome victory view. no après drinks, and then got more pissed when Derek told us about the view that he saw from Half Dome. And as for me and my sister, I now plan the hikes.
What about that? Incredible. Derek, what a dick. Oh my God. Runs ahead. Wow.